Hey everybody, and welcome to Bible class. 1 Kings chapter 4 is where we're going to dive in to our study of God's Word as we take another step in our exploration of the United Kingdom of Israel. This quarter, we've been focused on these three kings, the first three kings in Israel: Saul, David, and Solomon. We have watched as the territory of Israel has grown from the days of Saul to the days of David, now much greater in the days of Solomon. This really was the golden age of Israel. So let's listen in to what our narrator tells us about the reign of Solomon, beginning in 1 Kings 4, verse 20. Are you ready? Judah and Israel were as many as the sand by the sea. They ate and drank and were happy. Solomon ruled over all the kingdoms from the Euphrates. You see the Euphrates River up here, all the way down into the territory of the Philistines, down there toward the border with Egypt. They brought tribute and served Solomon all the days of his life. His provision for one day was 30 cores of fine flour, 60 cores of meal. What was a core? You might talk about that as a class. 10 fat oxen, 20 pasture-fed cattle, 100 sheep, besides deer, gazelles, roebucks, and fattened fowl. Solomon, his people, are living the good life. He had dominion over all the region west of the Euphrates, over all the kings west of the Euphrates. He had peace, we're told, on all sides around him. Judah and Israel lived in safety from Dan to Beersheba, north to south, every man under his vine and under his fig tree, all the days of Solomon. Solomon also had, listen to this, 40,000 stalls of horses for his chariots, 12,000 horsemen. Those officers supplied provisions for King Solomon and for all who came to King Solomon's table, each one in his month. They let nothing be lacking. Barley also, and straw for the horses, and swift steeds they brought to the place where it was required, each according to his duty. And God gave Solomon wisdom. We heard about that in our last study, right? Understanding beyond measure, breadth of mind like the sand on the seashore, so that Solomon's wisdom surpassed the wisdom of all the people of the East and all the wisdom of Egypt. He was wiser than all other men. His fame, the end of verse 31, was in all the surrounding nations. He spoke 3,000. We've got a book in the middle of our Bibles called Proverbs, right? A lot of those, most of those are from Solomon. His songs, we've got a song of Solomon in the heart of our Bible, right? He wrote more than 1,000 of them. He spoke of trees, from the cedar that is in Lebanon to the hyssop that grows out of the wall. He spoke of beasts and of birds and of reptiles and of fish. People of all nations came to hear the wisdom of Solomon, and from all the kings of the earth who had heard of his wisdom. Solomon is an incredible king. And what we want to focus on for the rest of our time as a class is what Solomon built. For nearly 500 years, the tabernacle has served as the place where the Lord dwelt among his people, stretching all the way back to the days of Moses, right? But in 1 Kings 5, verse 3, Solomon talks to a neighboring king, and he says, you know that David, my father, could not build a house for the name of the Lord his God because of the warfare with which his enemies surrounded him, until the Lord put them under the soles of his feet. But now the Lord my God has given me rest on every side. There's neither adversary nor misfortune, and so I intend to build a house for the name of the Lord my God. As the Lord said to David my father, your son, whom I will set on your throne in your place, shall build the house for my name. We know it as the temple, right? It took 7 years to build this house of the Lord. The temple itself, not including the surrounding chambers, was 90 feet long, 30 feet wide, twice the dimensions of the tabernacle, 45 feet high. As a class, I'm going to turn it over for you to work your way through this diagram, looking down on the temple. We'll provide some passages for reference. See if you can label all of the various things. For now, just listen. There were 2 40-foot bronze pillars at the entrance. They even had names for these giant pillars. There were 2 folding doors of cypress wood, and carved into the doors were cherubim and palm trees and open flowers. These doors were overlaid with gold. The walls on the inside were boards of cedar carved in the form of gourds and open flower. The narrator tells us all was cedar. No stone was seen, and Solomon overlaid the entire thing with pure gold. On the inside was the golden altar of incense and the golden table for the bread of the presence and 10 golden lampstands. Then there were also 2 more doors of olive wood carved with cherubim and palm trees and open flowers that formed the entrance to the most holy place. The doors were overlaid with gold, but on the inside, it was a 30-foot cube overlaid with pure gold. On the inside were 2 cherubim overlaid with gold, each 15 feet tall, 15-foot wingspans, and their wings spread out so that one wing touched one wall, the other touched the other. Their wings in the middle were touching, and beneath them was the Ark of the Covenant. On the outside of the temple was the altar of bronze for burnt offerings. There was a basin with cast metal that held 12,000 gallons of water for the priests to cleanse themselves. There were wheeled stands, bronze stands with 240 gallons of water each for rinsing after all of those burnt offerings. There's a lot going on here. In 1 Kings chapter 5, verse 13, our narrator tells us how it was all possible. Solomon drafts 30,000 men. He sends them up in shifts, and while they are there, 70,000 burden bearers, 80,000 stone cutters, beside his chief officers who were over the work. Verse 17, at the king's command, they quarried out great costly stones in order to lay the foundation of the house with dressed stones. It takes 7 years. Here's where we'll end our video in chapter 6, verses 11 through 13. In connection with this temple, the word of the Lord came to Solomon concerning this house that you're building. If you will walk in my statutes and obey my rules and keep all my commandments and walk in them, then I will establish my word with you, which I spoke to David your father. I will dwell among the children of Israel and will not forsake my people Israel. The temple is a big deal in the Bible. So let's explore it together. Thanks for being in class. Hope I've set you up for good discussion, that you have a great rest of your class and a great rest of this week.